Okay, so I just started recording. So hello all tutors. This is Amy and Godfrey as well. We're going to be doing a video on Turnitin today to give you a bit of guidance on how to use it, maybe a brief background on why we're using it and its capabilities, so you can use it for your reference. When you log into your Turnitin, it will not look like what you're seeing on your screen right now. This is an administration version, so it will look a lot less cluttered than mine. So we'll go through that in just a moment. So just to give you a bit of brief history on Turnitin, as I'm sure Godfrey will also do, it is a platform we've had for quite a few years now. But we haven't really been using it to its full potential, and it's a very, very useful piece of software from both an administration point of view and a regulatory point of view. So with that in mind, we're looking to try and use it in a much more proactive way. So when we invite you to start a profile on Turnitin, we will give you your login details. And when you log in, you will see in front of you on your homepage your class. So if you are a tutor for example, FIT, Finance for International Trade, you will log in and you will just see that one module. If you are a tutor on a few modules or a few courses, you will see all of them. So for example, if you are like Mike and you have several courses that span different levels, you will see them all separately laid out in front of you. Did you want anything to add to that, Godfrey?
No, that's fine. Please go ahead.
Okay, so for the April assessment periods, students are starting to submit, but not all of them are yet. So I'm just briefly going to take you into how it is currently looking, and then I'll show you what it may look like. So for the subjects that have two parts to assessments, that's all at level 3 and the business environment and IPD for level 4, you'll see it separated into two parts as a student submits a separate assessment per part, just like they always have done. You'll see over here you get a little 0 in this column, and then next to it you have a 3. So later on when we look at a piece of work that has been submitted, you'll see it'll be this column that is populated. So the 3 here means that 3 students have signed up for the class, which means they've signed up with readiness to submit, but they haven't submitted quite yet. So when we click onto view, you'll see...
So Amy, would I be right in thinking that means that they've created their accounts on Turnitin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they've said that I intend to put a paper up, but I haven't loaded it yet. Is that right?
Precisely. So you'll see here we've got no submission yet, and the grade section, when you click on it, it says that you can't do it basically. You can't do it yet because they haven't submitted. That's why it's grayed out. Okay, so they haven't submitted yet. So if you log into your class and you see there is one of these like this example here at the bottom, that means that a student has signed up but has not submitted. Okay, so if that does happen, I suspect we probably have already contacted the student ourselves because Karen and I will be keeping an eye on this. But if you're concerned, please do raise it with us and we'll double check which student has made a class profile but has not submitted. So if I just go back, I will show you an example of where a student has submitted, if I can remember which one has had a submission recently. I think it's FIT. Yes, so you'll see here 3 students have signed up for the class and 1 student has actually submitted already. So when I go into view, you'll see here there is actually a titled class here. Okay, so you've got 2 students who still haven't submitted, and then you've got 1 student who has submitted. So when you actually come to looking at your own classes, that will be populated in more depth. I'm just briefly going to take you back to this page and explain a little bit of what you see in front of you. So you have the start date, which is when this portal was opened. So from the 3rd of April onwards, that was when the question was released, and students were then able to submit at any point from then onwards until the 15th of May at 5 p.m, which is the due date for our main cohort of students. And then here we have a post date. Now this post date is when results may be revealed to students. So we have a 6 to 8 week marking process. We always aim to hit the 6 weeks to ensure students are given sufficient time to receive their results. This date here of the 10th of July is the latest possible date students could see their work. The reason we've given that date is just to ensure that Karen, Godfrey and I are able to check all of the marking, all the moderation in full before releasing the marks. So once the marking and moderation has taken place after the 6-week period, Karen, Godfrey and I then have 2 extra weeks, if necessary, to double check everything has been done correctly and the marks are ready to be released. So
and Amy, am I right, at that point then we would change this post date potentially to, let's say, the 1st of July or something like that, to say we are now ready to release them.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. The date can be changed. We cannot change it any later for regulatory reasons, but we can put it earlier. So if we've done all our checks and we're happy, we can release the marks earlier to students, which I'm sure they'll be very happy about. But this is just to ensure for both your peace of mind and ours that no marks are released by mistake, that they're all sort of quarantined until the right time. Okay, so we'll come back to that later just to give you a bit more reassurance, but just that's why the date there is the 10th of July. Okay, so I'm going to be using the Moldova cohort as an example because they have all submitted and they are not actually going to see their marks via this platform, so I'm able to mess around with them and not have any worry that they're going to see it. So if I scroll down to Moldova, you'll see Mike's name in brackets here. That means that the class has been assigned to him. So you will see for your classes, your name will be in brackets and you will not see any other people. So that's why his name is in brackets and your name will be in brackets on your own classes. So if we just click into it, similarly to the FIB and FIT for the other module, there are 2 there, and you'll see they're much more populated than the other ones I showed you. Now, it's important to note that this student here, you'll see a name rather than anonymous. That will not happen on your group. That is a mistake on my part. Because the Moldova students are a slightly different cohort, rather than submitting directly, we uploaded them all manually. And because of that, I made just a little mistake in clicking a box and I haven't hidden this student's name. So that's the only reason that student's name is shown. With your assignments, it will say anonymous marking and you will not be able to see the students' names. Here we have the title. So that will hopefully be the student's ID and a brief description of the actual module. Please do not worry if the student ID is not written in the title and the student has forgotten. Please also do not worry if the student hasn't even written the ID on the paper itself. When the student signs up to Turnitin, they write their name and that will be what is under the author section. And although you as a tutor will not be able to see it, as an admin, we can see that field. So if you find you've marked a student's work where the title doesn't say their student number and neither does the work, don't worry, we will still be allocating the correct grade to the correct student because we will have that information.
So Amy, just to, that document name is the document that has been assigned by the student themselves, and there's always the possibility that they've made a mistake. Is that right?
Precisely. So because I manually uploaded all these students, I've manually uploaded them all in a very similar format. So you can see there's a nice consistent, consistent-ish pattern between all of these. You will not see a consistent pattern with your students. I guarantee you every single one of them will name it differently. Karen and I are trying to catch students who submit putting their name in the title and asking them to resubmit because it is meant to be anonymous. There may be students that submit at the last minute that we need to catch and might not be able to resubmit with a new document. So there may be occasions when you do get a student putting their name in there. All I can say is as best as you can, please try and ignore it. It's meant to be anonymous marking and we have stressed in all our instructions to students it is meant to be anonymous. So there is really no excuse for it, but I guarantee you there will be students who do it. Okay, moving on to the next column. This is the similarity column. So this I will come back to, I think either later on in this video or maybe in a separate video, depending on how much time we have today. Because I'd just like to add something
to this myself, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
Trying to look at this from the perspective of the tutors. Turnitin has been often, the focus of Turnitin has been on this issue of the similarity and the similarity percentage. I want to set the scene right from the start that we do not see the percentage or the color of this as being in any way the most important aspect of Turnitin. The most important aspect of the Turnitin is that its platform as a marking tool, marking and moderation tool, and you'll see lots of things in there which will improve you. and that where similarity is an issue, you'll be able to see specifically what the text is and where the text is, and you may find that there are some of these which have got 12% are in fact, as far as you're concerned, not good and need to be raised, and there may be some with 44% or even higher where you consider it to be absolutely perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want anybody to think that we should be taking more care necessarily of those with higher percentages. As Amy will show you,
mm-hmm.
What you need to do is to look at each bit of text on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are certain occasions, especially if students have perhaps submitted interim assessments, etc., where there may be similarity that's pulled from their own work, which is in most cases perfectly fine, but not in all cases. So we'll come back to that maybe after we've gone through the marking tools you can use, just because I think it is a bit of a bigger issue and I'd like to cover it in full. So the next column is the grade column. This is where the marks will populate once you have marked the student's work. So as you mark them, you'll see that the pencil will change to an actual numerical grade. And this response column, if I hover over it, it says the student has not viewed. So just coming quickly back to the post date that I mentioned earlier about the 6 to 8 week marking process or deadline, so to speak, which is currently listed as the 10th of July as the very, very latest date we could possibly push to, and that's after both marking, moderation and administrative checks from both Godfrey, Karen and I. So that doesn't just include marking, it includes everything. So at that point, when we are happy that the students can see the work, that's when it will be revealed. If at any point before that the mark is changed, altered, the students will not know about it. So if you mark through the papers, and as many tutors I know often do, they get to the end of their marking and they feel like the marking they have done at the end has actually changed how they feel about some of the previous marks. Maybe they've found some really excellent pieces of work or work that's made them made me question sort of the marks they've given students earlier for whatever reason. It's not unusual at all that tutors go back and remark or slightly alter the marks of other students. If you do that, please be assured that the students will have no idea about it. They will not see the mark until it has been fully marked, moderated and assured by the administrative team here. So please don't worry about your marking changing or your feedback changing until you're happy with it and pass on for moderation. No student will see it. Okay, the next bit I know has been quite important in terms of trying to address maybe some issues which tutors might face in that they've had things done previously in a way that they find a lot easier. So if you know that you're going to be moderating or marking work and you will be away from an internet source, this is a really useful thing to do. So Turnitin does have an app, an iPad or an iPhone app. I believe it's probably only really usable on an iPad, if I'm honest. Which does allow you to mark offline. Only on an iPad can you mark offline. If you're marking on a desktop or an Android-related iPad or whatever they are, you have to be connected to the internet in some form to be able to mark work. So if you do not have an iPad or the capability to mark with an iPad, then you can download the student's work to mark offline and then come online and basically copy and paste maybe what you've marked offline. I don't know what process you want to use, but you would do so by downloading the papers. So you can either download them one at a time, or probably more likely for yourself, you go over to the tick box in the far corner and click on it, which highlights all the papers, as you can see. And if you scroll over to the right hand side, you'll see there's a download button. So when you click, oh, you probably can't see now, can you, on the download button, you'll see you can either download the original file. So the original file in all these cases is a doc file, a Microsoft Word file. You can download the original file as PDF, or you can download the grade mark paper. I doubt very much that if you're doing this, you'll actually want to download it as a grade mark paper or as a PDF. I imagine the reason you're doing this is because you want to mark it offline, probably via Word. So you'd want the original file. So you click on original file. You'll see it asking if you're happy for it to compress your files. You say yes please, and it will have a think to itself. And you'll see here your files are being compressed. When compression is complete, a zip file will be available for download in your Turnitin messages. Okay, so up top, you'll see messages. If you click on that, you'll see new. I've done this before, as you can see here, but new on the 27th of April, you'll see bulk download. So if you click on that, and on the link here, so your files are ready for download, please click on the link below. Yes, please. And you'll see just down the bottom here, the download happening. Okay, once that's been downloaded, if you click on it, it will open up a file of all your documents. So what I would suggest you do is you go onto your desktop, go onto your own personal computer and create a file, and then you can either just highlight all and drag and drop, or you can right click, that's fine, right click, copy, paste, whatever you would like, and you will have all those documents then in doc form to mark offline. And then when you are able to access the internet again or get access, you can go through the marking process as you have done previously. Okay.
I'd just like to add that many of you won't do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's really for people who are traveling all the time,
Mm-hmm.
let's say on trains, and where you don't have a good internet connection. If you're sitting in your office or home or whatever, it's far preferable to mark the way that Amy's about to show you, and there's no need to download it. I don't want anybody to think that you need to go through this process of compressing folders, downloading, unzipping, etc. in order to do the marking. You don't.
No.
You only need to do that if you want to have the papers available offline. And what you may do is keep them such that if you're going through and you've got internet connectivity for paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, and then you don't have connectivity for paper 4, so you do that one offline, you do paper 5 offline, you do paper 6 offline, then now you have internet connectivity, you go back to doing them online. So you only actually mark offline those ones that you're marking while you don't have internet connectivity. Otherwise, it's much better to do it online.
Mm-hmm. I'd just like to note on that, as Godfrey said, it's much easier because if you do mark them offline, you'll have to just duplicate your work when you mark them online, because this is the platform where students will be seeing their marks and feedback. So it's essential that you can populate the online platform as best as you can so students can get the best experience from both their feedback and from getting their marks. So as I said, you only download the files if you know you're going to be away for a longer period of time away from internet, and if you don't have an iPad. If you have an iPad, please do download the app because you can mark offline, and then the second you get internet connection, you can then with your iPad and basically refresh it and it will update. I can't wait till they can do that for Android and possibly even for desktop by using some form of, I don't know, program you can download. But for now, it's only on iPad, which I know limits many of you. But yes, as Godfrey said, please do not mark offline unless you really, really have to. Okay, so moving more just into the grading. When you come to grading work, you just click on the paper and it will open a brand new window. Just going to make that window full screen. Okay, so the first thing you probably want to do is double check the similarity. Okay, we'll come to that in more depth later. So let's just say you've done that and you're happy with it. Okay, so we'll refer to similarity, I think, in a separate video is probably more relevant. So say you've done that. You then want to come to mark the work. So I'm going to start off with the way of marking the work that perhaps is the most familiar to you all, and will probably be the easiest. So usually Kevin has very kindly sent around to all of you a mark sheet of which has some guidance on how many marks you allocate to each part of the question and how much you allocate to the tone, style and format. So if you click on this little square box here, it's a rubric/form. So Karen and I have named it Criteria 1 and Criteria 2. I believe in the past Kevin may have named it something along the lines of Section 1, Section 2. I'm not really sure.
I mean, in a lot of cases, it's question 1, question 2, question 3, or something like that.
Yeah, pretty much. So I think we just named it Criteria 1 because we thought it was the closest kind of ambiguous term we could think of. So if you look just down the bottom here, where you can see in big capital letters criteria 1, I'm just going to, if you see here, if you hover over it, you can actually pull it up and make it bigger. So criteria 1, which is the first one we're looking at here, means you have to look at the student who is outlining the role of different business departments and helping to facilitate, etc. So the first answer should consider sales, marketing, production, finance, and administrative functions and how the business's growth and performance can be measured. So that is, so to speak, the first question of assignment 1 or paper 1 for FIB specifically. That is what the question is for this assessment period. And you then get to pick between 0 and 10 how you think that student has addressed that paper. So it ranges from not doing it at all, to a low fail, to 1, to a mid fail, to a high fail, low pass, high pass, etc. So it takes you all the way through as you gradually get to a low distinction, high distinction, very high distinction, and then actually full marks. I'm not sure how often you actually be able to assign full marks, because that is quite a big thing to say someone has completely met the criteria, but it possibly could happen. So once you're happy with your choice for that section, you can then move on to criteria 2.
Can I just interrupt for a second here?
Mm-hmm.
If you notice that what's happening there is the first mark has got 45%, and you can see that because if Amy, if you slide to the right-hand side, you slide that one, the top one to the right-hand side, criteria 1, you can see now it's 4.5 out of 10, that's 45%. Mm-hmm. So this particular criterion, whatever it is, and it's different for different questions, mm-hmm. different papers. This has got, so clearly there's 45% on the first one, 45% on the second one, and 10% on style and, mm-hmm. and tone, etc. So what you're getting is you've got the ability to be able to choose on a grade up to all of or part of that 45%. So if you were to take, for example, 4 out of 10, if you go to 4 out of 10 mm-hmm. there,
yeah.
What that will do is that will add 18 marks there. And if you did 4 out of 10 on all of those sliders, that person would get 40% overall. That's how it all comes up, and you'll see 4 out of 10 at the top there. Yeah.
There you go. So it's important to note, once you have filled out all the criteria, so you've looked at criteria 2. So if you click on criteria, so click on criteria 1, brings up criteria 1, click on criteria 2, it then explains the next half of the question the student should be addressing, and states at the bottom the answer should outline certain things. So you pick that, and last but not least, style, tone and format. I'm going to actually add a bit more to this rubric, because style, tone and format doesn't actually give you much information on what you should be looking for. So Godfrey, if you don't mind, I'd like to go over this at some point before we make these rubrics live in a few weeks' time, just to state in a bit more depth what style, tone and format means. So I'm sure many of you know that means referencing, spelling, grammar, but I would really like to just, in that case, kind of spell out a little bit more, because I know it's only 10% of the overall mark, but a lot of students fall down with poor referencing, bad referencing, non-existent referencing, and that is something which is highlighted by the similarity checker we'll come back to in another video. Yep. I think it's important to know how that reflects the marks.
So just go back to the criteria 1, if you wouldn't mind. Mm-hmm. What I'd like to emphasize here is that there's nothing here that is new. All of this is what you're doing at the moment. For most courses, there are specific assessment criteria. So last time when I sent you the papers to be marked, I will send you specific assessment criteria for some of the modules. I don't think they exist for all of them. And that's what these criteria are here, where it says there's low fail, mid fail, high fail. They're just blank at the moment. But the specific assessment criteria will go in here to give you an indication of, well, what would constitute a high fail? What would constitute a low pass? What would constitute distinction? And you can check it, just as you would now pull out the assessment criteria and take a look at it. Mm-hmm. And similarly with the marking scheme, the section that's actually there, that's reminding you of what it is that we're looking for here.
Yeah. So once you've picked all of those and you're happy with them, let's just change one for the sake of it. You then would click Apply to Grade, and it automatically populates this field up here. This field up here is the overall marks. Okay. So once you populate it with the rubric, you can still alter it if you wish to a slightly higher mark or if you wanted a slightly, oh gosh, beg your pardon, a slightly lower mark.
Not that high.
Okay, so if I click apply to grade again, it will change it back to what the rubric wanted. Now, the rubric is meant to help you and aid you in giving you a good idea of what this student has met. So the criteria explain what the question is asking of the student. And by picking the level, you're picking the level of which the student has answered the question and met the learning outcomes for the module. If you think they've actually done a bit more than 41, because of course it's only percentages and maths, if you think they deserve maybe a 42 or a 43, there is no problem at all for you as tutors to change it. What we are concerned about, or what we don't want to happen, is a massive change to the marks. So we don't want it to, for example, go like that if it doesn't meet the criteria, because that would then suggest that when you've gone through and you've checked it, that the student actually hasn't met the level of criteria, so to speak. But this rubric is not meant to, I can't think of the correct word, not meant to tie you down in any way to the simple math. It just wants to guide you.
Yeah, so you would use the rubric as a guide to give you a mark, and then you can change it if you want to. Later, Amy is going to show you how to add comments, and I would ask you that if you do manually change it, please put in an indication of why you've changed it.
Okay, so that is the first sort of level of marking. Now, this can be done or should be done alongside providing the student with feedback. So let's just scroll down to a section of the work. I'm actually just going to zoom out a little bit. So down the bottom here, you've got a zoom function, and you can zoom out if you wish. I'm just going to zoom out so you can see a bit more, and then gently scroll down to the student's work. So let's go here. Okay, so you're reading through the work, and you're maybe trying to assess this first criteria. So if you look on the side, we're currently clicked on the rubric/form, which is why it's highlighted a slightly different color. That's why it's blue. If you move up one, you'll see feedback summary. Okay, when you click on that, you can always click back to the rubric. Don't worry, it won't delete anything. You'll keep exactly what you put there. You can always go back to it. Okay, so the text comment here is exactly, I've already actually populated it. You can see I've been on this earlier, can't you, Godfrey? Right, so usually it would say nothing on it like that. And in exactly the same way you've populated the mark sheets in Word previously, you can write there any feedback you like. So you just write feedback of any sort. And you have, as you can see at the top, up to 5,000 words to give the student feedback. And you can write as much as you think is applicable if you want to in this format. If you want to, you can also leave a voice comment up to 3 minutes long. Completely optional, but maybe if you've had quite a long day marking and you're getting a bit fed up of typing, or if you think you can actually articulate yourself better in 3 minutes and speak to the student, that's also a really good way of providing feedback. Okay, so that's one of the most simple ways, is by just typing in this box here. And when you go back over to the rubric, it automatically saves. So don't worry, there's no box to click to save. Every time you make an alteration to this and go off it, it saves. Equally, if you were to close it down and to go back on it, what you wrote on the rubric is all still there, and what you've written in the text is all still there as well. Okay? What I think is a really fantastic way of doing comments, especially for yourselves and especially tutors who've maybe got a lot of papers and are actually commenting a lot of the same things, is this function called quick mark. So just above the feedback summary is like a tick called quick marks. If you click on that, you'll see these little blue squares. Now these are created automatically by Turnitin, so they are already pre-done. Sorry, Mike. And they are used when you feel like students are going to be given the same comment frequently. So we've got awk here. So if I just drag and drop, so say I'm talking about the text just here. I'm going to drag and drop. And when I click on that, awkward, and it gives you a little bit of commentary, or the student a bit of feedback. Okay, so if you click on these on the sidebar, you'll see down the bottom here, they tell you what's in them. Okay, so these quick marks are really, really useful for very vague comments. They're not specific comments to this student's work. They're general comments that you think are going to be used often. So things like unclear, awkward, improper citation, things like that. They can be really useful to use as tutors because you don't have to keep on repeating yourself. You just
and you
click.
can add these yourself
Yep,
as
you
well.
can click and drag. So
for example, if you take something topical, somebody's going on about Brexit, and you just have a thing saying Brexit, and then there you say, you know, as was indicated in the tutorial, long explanations about what may happen with Brexit are not required and do not add value to the paper. You don't want to be saying that to 20 different people, so you would just drag that across.
Yeah, so if you want to edit your quickie marks, or quick marks, beg your pardon, you'll click on the little settings button up here, and it brings up all the ones you currently use. So if you did want to add one in a very quick way, you can do, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. But just to bring you back to the last way of marking, you can just mark on the text. So if I click on the text, you'll see a little bubble. So I think this is actually a much more efficient way of creating commentary because you can actually tell the student where on the text you're having issues. So you can also drag it. If you feel like, oh, I shouldn't have put it there, I should have actually put that down here because it links to this sentence here, you can drag and drop. Okay, and you then write in there as much or as little as you like. And then you click off it and you can continue. And if you want to make another note down here, again, click, click, etc. And you can come off it. Now, as Godfrey said, if you feel like you're making the same comments again and again and again, you think, oh gosh, this would be really useful if I had this as a quick mark. There's a little bit down here. It says convert to quick mark. You click on that. You give it a title. So the other ones have been given titles like AWK, CS, commonly confused. So you might just do, as Godfrey said, Brexit comments. You click save. You see over here, Brexit comments, and then you would then drag and drop. Now, students can see what you have named them, so please name them carefully. Don't name them inappropriately. Although you've created them personally, and I don't believe all tutors can see them, but students can see this line here, and when they click on it, they'll then get the more depth. You can also add a comment to this quickie thing. So if you wanted to, as Godfrey said, say the general comment, don't do this, you can also add maybe onto it something more personal, so some more feedback for the student. I'm just writing here, I'm not writing anything in particular, but you can then put more feedback, so you're actually expanding on the quick mark if you want to. If you want to delete anything, really simple, it's a little bin there and it's gone. You can undo it, as you see very kindly. They allow you to undo things if you do accidentally click in error. So just to briefly go over that again, just to give you a bit more comments on marking. There are, I believe that's 4 or 5 ways of leaving comments on papers. So you can either just write the text comments in this box here. You can do a voice comment. You can utilize the quick marks, although I would say that the quick marks alone are not, you know, are not okay for students purely because they are very general comments. But as I said, if you wanted to use a quick mark and then scroll down the quick mark and add a comment that's more specific to that student, that is completely fine because that allows them that kind of one-on-one commentary which feedback should provide. Or you can just very simply scroll through the work, click on the place where you would like to add a comment and add it in.
And so I would like to emphasize that each of you may use different methods, and you can use all of the methods. So for me, I think what I would do is I would drag across the commonly used things as they are. For some of them, I might add a couple of points, where I say something like, this is particularly true in this case because, or something on those lines. And then for something that requires a lot of explanation, which really would just take too long to type, just press the record button, talk about it, and that, I mean, I don't think to do voice for the whole paper would be okay, but adding voice comments is perfectly acceptable to be part of your feedback. And these things can save you a great deal of time, or perhaps in the same amount of time, you can give them more valuable feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than just explaining the mark that you've given them, actually saying how they could improve next time.
Absolutely. I think the key word there is improve next time. The whole point of assessments and assignments is not just for the student to prove that they can pass the work, but also that they can progress next time. They can gradually get better through their qualification and gain knowledge through it. So I think it's really important to see where the student may have gone wrong and be able to suggest in future how they could progress or improve. And a lot of the tutors have done extremely strong comments on interim assessments and other bits and bobs the students have done to give them that guidance. So it'd be wonderful if that could be then used in a similar kind of fashion on the main assessments and the main assignments.
Without it being a lot of extra work.
Precisely, precisely. It does offer you a lot of different ways of commenting, depending on what you have preference to. And also this rubric does then allow you that kind of confidence that you're giving them a mark that is completely based on the question, that you don't have to keep flicking between different pieces of paper to find the criteria. They're just literally down the bottom. So you have confidence that you don't need to keep looking for a million documents. It's right here in front of you. It's a lot quicker. And also, once you've marked this piece of work, you can just move on to the next one. So at the top, you'll see next submission. Click next. Next student. Okay, the rubric's gone back to zero, the thing's gone back to zero. You've got a new student's piece of work. Off you go again. And you can just continue. And at any point, if you want to stop and close, if I just refresh this for you, you'll see that now there's a grade there, 43. That is what the grade we gave the student is now populated there, and it's ready. And as you go through them, the marks will populate, and you may have to refresh the page depending on your server and how often it refreshes, but bit by bit, they will all be marked there, and you can go back at any point and you can change the mark as you see fit.
And just a final thing point on the comments. One thing that has been raised with us is, what if I want to just put in a comment to myself, and then possibly, I don't want that to go to the student. There isn't a section that allows you to do that, but what you can do is you can easily change the comments that are there. They're not set in stone. So what you can do once you've finished marking this paper is you can just quickly review the comments, just click through each one, and then you might decide, okay, actually I want to take that out, and then that's then ready for the student. So you can't put things on here which you don't want the student to see. You can temporarily, but then you have to take them out, otherwise the student will see them once it's released.
Yeah, the idea of Feedback Studio is that students get the best benefit from all the feedback you can provide them with, so they will see everything and hear everything if you choose to record things.
But if we modeled this ourselves, what if somebody says, you should have mentioned X, Y, Z, and then a bit later you see that they actually did mention X, Y, Z. Well, either if you want to, you can go back and change that comment, or you could say, oh, I see you've mentioned it here. That's okay. That's because it might be that you felt it was more appropriate for that to be mentioned in question 1, and you found you've mentioned it in question 2. So it might be okay to actually do that.
Yeah, and it also provides really good feedback for the student, because you can give them an idea of where you expected it. As a tutor and as someone who's read through, I imagine by the end of it, quite a lot of papers, you have a certain expectation where bits will go. And if the student hasn't put it there and you think it might be more appropriate, that's great, and they've gained a bit of knowledge from yourself there.
Okay, so Amy, am I right in thinking the next thing we're doing is we're moving on to the similarity?
Precisely.
Right. So I think to break this up so it's not too long a session, we'll close out around about now, and then we'll go on to the similarity in the next session.
I agree. I'm just going to stop the recording here, and thank you everybody for listening.